Well, it's new territory for me. I don't know. I think I'm about 40 kilometers in, I think, up Logging Road. And this is Great Central Lake behind me. Great Central Lake has had a pile of experiences. That's for sure. Great Central Lake, and then farther that way, Comox Lake. You've all heard about Comox Lake. Strathcona Park. Forbidden Plateau, the ski area, who's named Forbidden Plateau, directly relates to the topic that's dominating this channel lately, this past couple of years. One thing I can say about what's unfortunately smacking me in the face after moving is a long time ago, some absolute scumbags made a deal. I don't know how they were even put in the position to make this deal. They basically sold off Vancouver Island. How? I haven't a clue. But it just makes me want to puke. I'm driving up Logging Road into the center of Vancouver Island where there's nothing but mountains, wilds, logging roads, and it's all considered private property. There's gates everywhere. No dirt bikes, no motorcycles, absolutely no shooting. No this, no that, no trespassing, can't go here, can't go there. Gate after gate after gate. I'll tell you what, if I could find the people that made that deal, I'd love to seek them out and kick them in the nuts as hard as I could. I don't understand how any human being could ever get in that position to fuck something up so brutally as they did this. What a bunch of assholes. It's kind of hard to take, when you are a I consider myself fairly free-spirited human being with my own life. I cannot stand anyone telling me what to do. Obviously, I respect the law. I especially respect conservation and wildlife. But it's just hard to take. You take a look at all these wilds all around me right now, and to think that somebody could come up to me right now and tell me this is private property. Holy shit. I'd have a tough time not getting into it with whoever pulled that. Anyways, that's the main thought of my brain going on right now. It's a real hard pill to swallow. And the amount of game sign is absolutely tragic. Obviously, you guys know now I've been a professional big game guide, a hunter, a conservationist for a long time. It doesn't take me much to recognize sign of various game species, and I'll tell you what, there's next to nothing in this 40 kilometers I just did. It's pathetic. It's sad. I don't know how long I will last living on the island. I left the island years ago, swore never to live here again. Giving it a go. But it's tough. It's tough for me to not be able to travel less than 20 minutes and go find a grizzly bear or a moose or a pile of deer or some wolves or wolverine and set up cameras, seek them out and film them, even hunt them at times. And then here, it's just so hard to travel for almost an hour, and all I see is signs in my face saying you can't go here, you can't go there, private gate here, don't go there, you can't do this, you can't do that. Oh, and there's no game sign either. It's like, what the fuck am I doing here? All right, there's my rant for the day. Let's get some important voices heard. Some important voices heard. Guess who wrote it again? Just caught it? The Owl Man returneth. I haven't a clue what he wants to get to you all, but in the past, it's been pretty helpful so far. So let's get right into what the Owl Man is shared today, shall we? Steve, I decided to write you again to offer some help to those who have young children and do not know how to address the issue of having these wild people lurking around their property. I really hate taking up your time and space that is reserved for these who need this as therapy and help. Hey man, you write anytime, all right? I only share things here that I think may be of benefit to your audience and for the wild people as well. My interactions and encounters with these beings are very personal. I only wish to share things here that may help the traumatized. I am very protective of the Sabe. Despite how they outclass us, they do have weaknesses. I came to realize how easy it is to mess up their lives with some knowledge I have of them. Because of that, I will probably never share those things. You, Steve, understand environmental carrying capacity, prime marginal, and poor habitat, and how it affects population. Well, isn't that just random after what I just said? You live in a place where the Sabe can easily move around. The ones I deal with do not have that option. They have to fly below our radar. I don't trust my fellow man. We are backstabbers and betrayers, and the Sabe's kind see us like that as well. So I have to be responsible for both peoples. I get it, man. I have no children of my own, but my sister has 4 daughters, who are now 26, 20, 17, and 9. Despite these girls being my nieces, I have loved and looked after them with my father's heart, especially the oldest, 3. The 3 girls grew up in my home for many years, and I'm very close with them. I've exposed them to the outdoors and have taken them on as many exploits as possible. As an adult knows, kids have great different personalities. As any adult knows, kids have different personalities, and young girls can often be a challenge when exposing them to outdoorsy things. My 2 oldest nieces took to the outdoors much better than their 2 youngest siblings. Not one in my immediate family is a stranger to my journey with the Sabe. I've been laughed at. I never have been laughed at or doubted. I never experienced the ridicule or doubt that some people receive. My sister and I have not always been on speaking terms, but she has always trusted me with the welfare of her children and knew I would give my life for them if it came down to it. Not long after the Sabe had introduced themselves to me, I decided the respectful thing to do was introduce my family to them as they had me. I made a promise to the 3 individual clans that I was interacting with to never again bring strangers into the areas. They lived, and I have kept that promise. Sorry, I got a little bit of a glare here. I'm going to read that sentence one more time. I made a promise to the 3 individual clans that I was interacting with to never again bring strangers into the areas they lived, and I have kept that promise. The only other people I have brought to meet them have been my sister, her 2 oldest daughters, and my wife. All went well with everyone except my wife. She found it strange when we were dating, but her first few experiences with them really made her uncomfortable. They can speak to her, and she finds it unsettling, but has come to accept them as a part of her new normal without freaking out. Oh, good for you, good for her. The first introduction of my oldest niece took place when she was 16. At the time, it was myself, my niece, and 2 of my experiencer friends, an adult man and woman. Us 3 adults had been interacting and communicating with the Sabe in their woods. We would often go to these woods at night with the sole intention of speaking to a Sabe clan leader I will call Bob. This is not his real name, and out of respect, I don't publicly share their individual names. This particular evening was a reunion, so to speak, of myself and my best friend, who was the individual who had introduced me to this clan a few years prior. He had moved out of state, and I had not seen him in many years, and the Sabes in the forest had not either. I had convinced him to return for a short time to experience mind-speak communication with the same beings he met long before he met me. They're actually very excited about being able to finally speak to him this way. This female friend of mine was at the beginning of her journey with these beings and her ability to speak in this form fluently. So let me set the stage here. We have 3 adults, myself included, and a 16-year-old girl, 2 adult men, a woman, and a teenage girl. All of us are standing at a tree line of a woodland that hosts a clan of Sabe. Upon arrival, my female friend would reach out with her mind to see if anyone was home, so to speak. Typically, there would be a watcher or a sentry that was always keeping an eye on this area because it was well used by hikers. We would formally introduce ourselves audibly and ask for Bob or his brother. This clan was governed by 2 brothers, and they typically were together most of the time. Sometimes we were told to wait for Bob's arrival if he was nearby, yet there were times he was attending to business elsewhere. They never seemed to share what they may have been. They never seemed to share what that may have been. Bob happened to be available this specific evening. Bob, his brother, and other members of the clan eventually showed up to listen in this night. Like I said, It was a big deal to them to see my best friend again. There was a lot of information shared that evening, but it was more of a personal matter, like old friends being reunited with explanations and conversations over things that we never had the chance to speak of due to the communication barrier. It came to pass that I introduced my 16-year-old niece. Remember, this is a patriarchal culture, so it is the job of the male authority to introduce the people you are with to them. They will do the same. We discovered that in this clan, the only Sabe that was officially allowed to communicate would be Bob or his brother. The rest of the Sabe who were watching only did that if they had a question. They would defer it to Bob to be asked. Bob's brother has a mate and a teenage son and a daughter we think was around 8 years old. We will call the daughter Sabe Helen. The Sabe took great interest in my 16-year-old niece, saying she looks like the old ones. My niece is Hispanic, short, darker skin, with long black hair. The Sabe in my area refer to First Nations people as old ones because there have not been many First Nations people in this area for well over 100 years. They lived long enough lives to remember a time when they did. Helen wanted to meet my niece. My niece was rather apprehensive because sitting a few yards from her was a Sabe sitting in the bushes with glowing red eyes. I told her to walk up to the tree line and introduce herself to Helen. She did. I can explain the eye glow thing to you. Not all of them can do this. The self-illuminating eyes are tied to their emotional state. Red is heightened awareness. It can be anger, fear, or alarm. As they calm down, the eye glow goes down with it. So it will glow red to amber, orange, yellow, and once they are at rest, comfortably, or at peace, it will be a cool pale blue or white. I have no idea how this bioluminescence works, and they don't either. It's just tied to their emotions. Helen stood about 6 feet away from my niece. Now remember, it's completely dark. We have no light, but the ambient light. This is what my niece said. "Hi, Helen, I love your eyes." Helen's eyes glowed a cool whitish blue color like an LED. Helen was about 4 feet, all dark in color, and had the overall silhouette of a human child with rough edges of hair covered body. I remember my niece leaning in forward to get a good look at her. Helen was very excited, and via mind speak she said she was the same color as my niece's hair, jet black, except it covered her whole body. I remember Helen saying something about eating insects, and my niece said that was gross. We had to explain that. Helen wanted to reach out and touch my niece's hair, and that is when my niece leaned out to let her do so. And that never happened. A large figure rose up behind her. I remember my niece's head moving up. She got scared and said, "I don't think that'd be a good idea." She thanked her and quickly moved back to me. The figure that rose up behind her was Helen's older brother. Helen's father apologized, and he said he did not want his daughter to do that because he didn't want his daughter to lose fear of us. He believed once she touched my niece, she wouldn't think anything of trying to do that to another human. My niece was never really scared, so to speak, but the size of the teenage brother really took her by surprise. That was a pretty momentous night for all of us, including the Sabe. That incident had long-term repercussions in that Sabe family. The little Sabe girl was obsessed with that interaction, and like us, constantly brought it up at dinner time for some time afterward, and it greatly concerned her father. He spoke of this often. My other niece was 9 when I introduced her. Her story is a little more complex. I always suspected this niece of mine was gifted and had the ability to mind speak with them. I used to take her to various locations where I knew various individuals and clans lived, and I would ask her to reach out and tell me what she would get. At this time, I never really introduced her. I was just testing her abilities. She would ask me questions in these various locations because she really didn't understand what she was getting back. She always knew things she should have had no way of knowing and would turn to me for answers. She always got it right. Just like us, there are social and interpersonal issues with the Sabe in each clan or family. My niece would always get some information about these issues that I was aware of, which allowed me to make sure what she was getting was not her imagination. The first time I took her for a night hike, we heard wood knocks, and that scared her. I told her they just know we are here, don't be alarmed. This was an area where I didn't know the Sabe very well. They eventually showed up, but didn't come very close to us. The Sabe at this location know who I am, but are very wary of me. I audibly introduce myself and my niece. I put my hand on her shoulder, and I tell them who she is and her relation to me. I then give her a shoulder hug and tell them she is dear to me like a daughter. After I did that, one actually said something audible in their language. They speak so fast, it sounds like gibberish. My niece proceeds to tell me that there is a young female. She's very scared that we are there. The adults are off on a hunt, and they let her and the younger brother alone to keep an eye on things, and we showed up. I let my niece do all the talking. I just told her to make sure she puts this young one's mind at peace. My niece introduced herself and her relationship to me, and I told her not to be afraid, that we meant no harm. She explained I was teaching her about them and their ways. Once this young Sabe was reassured, I told her to let her family know we were here and that we spoke and everything was good. We spoke a blessing over her and her family, and we left. This incident had a profound effect on my niece. It totally changed her confidence as a young, socially awkward little girl. It confirmed that she wasn't crazy or had some sort of mental illness. Both of these nieces are now young adults. The oldest is now 26 with 2 little girls and still talks about her encounters with me. The other niece is now 20 and very mature, confident, gifted young woman who still loves to go out for a hike in the dark with me or mother and her father. My sister's introduction and experiences have totally changed her life for the better. Like I said, we didn't always. But her experience with the Sabes, after I introduced her, changed her into a different person. One who is at peace with herself and the rest of the family. Honestly, she's a different person for the better. She's in the process of introducing her 9-year-old daughter to the Sabe because this young girl is now involved with horses. It's very possible the Sabe will eventually show up on a trail ride. Steve, I only share the things I think that are helpful to you and some of your listeners. You have 2 types of people in general, those who have to deal with a new reality and those who are curious about a new reality. The Sabe are nothing new under the sun. They've always been watching from the shadows of the wild places. I look back at my childhood now and I think of strange things that happened when I was done in the woods, and now know it was them. Once the genie's out of the bottle, you can't get him back in. No shit. Isn't that the truth? To all the people who are concerned about their children, and you know there is something lurking around your homes and property, they have always been there. Do not lose your sense of peace over this. To all the men who are concerned about the women and children in your family, if you suspect one is nearby watching you any time of day, you go inside and get your kids and wife and introduce them and yourself. You introduce them each by name and your relation to them. Introduce your wife as your woman. They don't use the term wife. Don't play tough guy. Pretend you're a neighbor introducing your family to new neighbors. Remember, we think nothing about introducing ourselves to neighbors, not knowing a damn thing about them. We have no idea what kind of people they are when we first show up, but we treat them with respect and dignity despite that. We assume they're decent people because they are human. Do not go out with a gun. Take the family dog out too. Swallow back the fear. State your intentions in simple terms. This is my family. I love them and I want them to be safe. We do not want you to be afraid, and we do not want to be afraid of you. As I've mentioned before, set the boundaries. Keep it simple. Don't stay out there a long time trying to get the point across. They seem to have a photographic memory and recognize faces and remember names. You don't have to be friends, but you have to be neighbors. It's better to get along with your neighbors, otherwise they can make life miserable. They also get anxious rather quickly. Just tell your kids these beings are real and their intentions are not to kill, harm, or eat them. For the most part, they are just typically very curious about our children because of our mutual similarities, and often children don't react like adults. Try to convey to your children that despite how they look, they are not much different than us. As parents, your children will react as you do. If you're terrified, they will be. Some will say, "What do I know?" Some will say, "What do I know? You said you don't have children?" I don't have children of my own, but I was a child once. I know how my behavior was a reflection of how my parents behaved. If you remain calm, confident, and in control, they will reflect that. It is very difficult for children to deal with the parents when they sense that their parents do not have a handle on something. How true is that? If they have a close encounter, come up with a plan that's best suited for you. It's okay to be scared. It's best to have the kids speak out loud to them in some fashion and just back away. They do not have to run. If you have guns, tell them the gun is for protection from other animals. Also teach them not to talk to anyone outside of the family about it. We all know how our culture views this subject, but you want to make sure they have a safe environment to talk about it. The Sabags actually understand family and social interaction because they have the same exact thing. They do not live like apes or monkeys. They have a societal structure no different than us, except theirs is a lot more cohesive than modern humans. Please do not respond with violence. There really is no need for that. You can set up a chain of events that will change your life. I once had one threaten to rip my arms off and eat them. It was terrifying, but I still have arms. Now there will be a whole bunch of listeners who will say I'm putting people in danger and will get someone killed, yada, yada, yada. Well, that's nonsense. I do not recommend seeking them out because once you connect with them of a deep level, their enemies become yours. Most people are not going to handle that well. You don't have to rebuke them in the name of Jesus to get them to leave you alone. It may keep them from walking on your front porch, but it won't drive them off the property. Remember, they were always there before you realized it. If they don't respect the name, they will keep messing with you. You know, in some vampire movies, the cross is useless unless you have faith. Well, the name of Jesus doesn't work if they have no fear of him. And trust me, I have met a few who couldn't care less. So much for that demonic stuff. If they hate you that much, they will just keep scaring the hell out of you from a distance and kill any animal you have. That would suck. After I proofread this, I realized that when one reads this line between human and Sabe became rather blurred. After all, the personal interaction seems human, does it not? There is no other way to describe it. Sometimes in our interactions with them, you forget they are giant hairy monsters to us. I see them as human, by our own definition of what makes us human. This is what allows me to march in the dark woodlands to go night fishing without any fear. Knowing they do understand your words and thoughts can give you some peace of mind. Please keep that in mind when you head out to hunt or fish or hike. Even if you think I made all this up, as I write from Fantasy Island with Mr. Rourke and Tattoo looking over my shoulder, I share these encounters to give an example of how you can educate and protect your children. It is by no means to be considered gospel. For me, it was the right thing to do and it has paid off dividends. For my sister especially. What I did may not be comfortable for some. In the end, the choice is yours, but confronting the fear of the unknown has a reward in and of itself. In closing, I want to say this. I spent more time educating my niece on what to look for and how to deal with human males to prevent them from being victimized. Anyone with daughters knows full well what I'm speaking of. They know how to deal with a Sabe encounter, and they do not see the subject as difficult as you may think. They have a much more difficult time trying to be hypervigilant navigating so-called human civilization. If you're more worried about the Sabes grabbing your children than other humans, please consider what really is the greater threat to your children never being seen again. Blessings to you, Steve, and all those who have ears to hear. Sincerely, the Owl Man. Bravo. Man, you know what? You have really donated a lot of time to the people here. And I believe you as well, most of us realize today, time is the most valuable thing that we all have at this time, is time. And the time that you have taken out of yours to come here and share is absolutely appreciated as such a massively generous, kind gift. All right? That's how I feel about that. And, yeah, I just can't say how much I appreciate you and what you've done here, all right? Very, very, very appreciated. And, I'd have, I don't know, my question list seems to somewhat change with priority from question to question as time goes here. Like, as example, I've just traveled through this valley. I know there's a handful of elk on the other side. There's a few deer. The fish are starting to hurt, and I mean hurt. There's two major salmon rivers back that way. And I know what it takes to find game. Sometimes I wonder, if that is exactly how they are surviving, hunting, fishing, gathering. I would like to know how hard it is for them. You know what I mean? I don't know what state you're in. I know there's a lot of states that have an absolute ridiculous amount of elk and deer. More so because the natural predators have been wiped out. That's a big factor. But I kind of wonder about the forest beings around here. They are here. They are here. They are right here around me. 110% guaranteed. But man, oh man, I wouldn't want to have to run around here hunting myself to be sustained absolutely. I wonder how much they actually have to bring back and eat, How often? That's just a question that I would have, being a hunter myself, and that's all we eat at home. But another thing too is possibly I'd have to, you know what, man, this is to you. You understand how many emails I've had. It's thousands. So forgive me if I forget something you may have mentioned previously. But maybe you have asked them previously, maybe you haven't, but what is the deal with the dogmen? What's the deal with the dogman topic altogether? I was listening to a podcast the other day, some very aware guys, and they were mentioning the dogman. One guy's ex-Special Forces, CIA, the whole 9 yards, and he said flat out that the dogman has been used and developed as a warrior type of being, and they've been used. And they are basically the enemies of the Sasquatch people, possibly. I don't know. It's such a freaking crazy topic to even talk openly about like this. It's very, very hard to wrap your brain around. I don't know anybody who's seen a dogman firsthand. I've never seen anything that looks like a cross between a canine and a human being in my life. I know I've said it a handful of times in the past. I'd probably just start putting holes in its head if I did see it. But what's the deal? Have you spoke of this with these people? Have they filled you in on what the deal is with these, quote, dogmen, end quote, That's something I'd like to learn about, for sure, because I don't know much about it. What else could I ask you? You kidding me, man? I could ask you forever questions. Maybe one day you'll entertain the thought of coming on live, not video. We just use your audio if you want. Maybe we could have a conversation sometime coming up in the future. I'm getting close to being ready to start talking to people live and extracting and sharing knowledge with the people. This is a very important thing to do right now. Hopefully, one of the messages I'm trying to get across to everybody is we are not going to find out the truth about anything unless we get it from the people. And that is a fact. So, for the people that get frustrated with me for bringing in other topics, just leave. Just leave. Once you get smacked in the face with your entry to the club of no return, if your brain is functioning somewhat, you start asking questions. A lot of questions. And those questions don't stay on the Sasquatch topic. Right? Maybe you guys have figured it out, maybe you haven't, but that is why I finally said, screw it, I'm coming forward. Enough of the bullshit. Enough of the mainstream small handle of ding-dongs that have held this narrative hostage and kept you guys going in circles for how long? And I basically went like this to every single one of them, started that shitstorm, which also knee-jerked them into marketing this channel nonstop for free. Thank them all for that. And now look where we are. We're the most viewed channel when it comes to this topic in the world. All because of you. All because of all the people being treated equal and having a voice. And that's all it took. That's all it took. Was to make sure everybody was equal and everybody had a voice. Now, too bad we couldn't spread that throughout our communities with every other topic that affects us as communities, right? All right, enough babbling. Al, man, appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. Email back again, all right? That was an absolute knowledge-filled email that many people are going to benefit from, without a doubt. Okay, what does this say? This is kind of an odd title. I'm going to read it. Let's see, I'll blast off a bunch of shares from here, and then I'm gonna keep going up this log road farther up the valley. We'll see what we can find, and maybe I'll set up with another view and share even more with you guys from there, all right? So, listen to this. This is titled, You Don't Speak For Me. Okay. Hello, Steve. How many times does a lie have to be shared until it becomes the truth? I've completely had it with leadership in the US, Canada, and honestly the world. I am not confused, I'm not delusional, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a dying breed. I in no way gave those leaders permission to speak in my behalf. They do not speak for me, signed, a small fringe minority. P.S. We're not going down without a fight. We need a you don't speak for me movement. On the other hand, Steve, you do speak for me, along with all the other suppressed voices that have had it with the circus going on all around us. I will not just lay down and let my children grow up questioning reality. We both know there is only one solution for what is going on with those in power. Like-minded, real men and women have to come together with the understanding that difference of opinion is normal, but core values should never be sacrificed. Those values do not just go away or change because talking heads say they do. They don't change because a corrupt media tells you differently. The values run through our veins and speak to us through our gut. Anyhow, I could go on for days pointing out all the countless violations and get great satisfaction out of handing down sentences for said violations, but out of respect for the topic and all of our time, I'll proceed with my experiences. Gotcha, man. I feel you. Absolutely. And before I get on with that, let's just add that if I could, I would absolutely go on a rampage with good men that had to do bad things to straighten the shit out, if I could. We'll leave it at that. Growing up, I spent much of my summers visiting my grandparents and family in an extremely rural area of eastern Kentucky, the kind of place you could count passing cars each day on one hand. Beautiful farmland in the bottoms and mountains surrounding us on all sides. In the evenings after dinner, everyone would sit on the porch until well after dark. People would visit back then, such as neighbors and family members. One evening, there was a strange vocalization coming from the ridge just above my grandparents' home, something unlike anything I had ever heard and clearly foreign to the adults as well, and the sound went on for some time. It was foreign to all aside from my grandfather. I spoke up and asked what that was, and he simply replied, "Mountain ape." That seemed to relieve the tension for the adults and made them all chuckle. However, my grandfather didn't laugh. He was a fifth-generation logger, so, looking back, I believe he knew the truth. Unfortunately, I never had an opportunity to discuss it further with him. By the way, the sound this thing made was not your typical whoop, but a much longer, drawn-out sound, almost like if someone yawned for 5 to 10 seconds. It's hard to describe, but unlike any animal that lives in those hills. I got one more encounter in the North Georgia mountains of 2020. I spent weeks deep in the Cohuda wilderness chasing blue line streams well away from the trails and other fishermen that hold the tiny native brook trout of Georgia. I spent days just hiking into a certain stream I found on the map that eventually led to the Conesagu River. After slowly making my way into this seldom seen country, I made my way up a feeder creek, more like a spring, facing northeast. I was standing on a huge patch of ginseng, unlike anything I've ever seen. I mention this because I wonder if it's related to my encounter. I had that heart thumping, time stood still, thinking about my options movement that chilled me to the bone. My mind was on my 10 mil, but my hand was not, which is unusual for me. Not that I'm trigger happy or actually draw down on anything and everything that makes a sound. I have encountered plenty of bears in which every time they are sprinting away in my area. More so, I have faced off with hogs and have a healthy respect for them. Neither of these animals strike that kind of fear. I heard one thud like a frying pan-sized hand slapping a hollow stump, and suddenly, all kinds of rotten wood, leaves, and dirt showered down on me. I never saw a thing, but everything in me knew I wasn't wanted there. I quickly made my way back to my base camp, and it was like I was in a completely different place. There was the usual feeling of being in my place, the real world, as you call it, Steve. The entire hike back to camp, I had every intention of packing up. By the time I got there, I felt more sure than ever I should stay. So I did just that. I never had another feeling like I did in that specific area. I haven't returned to the actual encounter site, but I've been within a half a mile on numerous other occasions with no bad feeling in my gut. I didn't tie my experiences together until I found your channel. I often wonder if people with a knowledge of wild plants and ancient medicines have encounters when they're in certain areas. I realize some regions and areas are more prone than others for sightings or encounters, but I'm curious if it's more so on specific faces of mountains, i.e. north, south, east, or west facing areas. Just a thought. I even question if it could be tied to a past native First Nation people and their sacred areas. I apologize for the long email, but I tried to give details and raise questions that might help someone else. Count me in with those that are willing to go to the end no matter what. Thank you for your dedication and time, Steve, RC. RC, thank you, man. Thank you for your time. Pretty sure we're basically on the same page with a few various topics. What's going on today? Well, what do you think? Should we do one more from here and then carry on? What do we got? It's almost 4 o'clock. 5. I'm not on a time limit today. I'm going to give you guys a 360 before I leave. I am curious about this lake. I'm curious about the mountains at that end of the lake. I'm curious to see if I feel pressure when I get up to the other, as far as I can go here anyway. So, I know there's some big fish in this lake. I know that for sure. Alright, let's keep going. One more, then I'm going to move on. We got to go away for a couple days, so I'll preload these. Alright. Mark this one as read. A very different Saturday experience, the title of this one. Hi, Steve and Sarah and the kids and horses. I'm writing finally, as I should have done sooner. I'm a 57-year-old woman from the U.S. Rocky Mountains and spent most of my childhood getting raised like a firstborn son by my Marine veteran forest ranger father. He was way more into nature than town and was also the ecology teacher during the winter months. He loved to be in the Shoshone National Forest, and we would walk off trail year after year searching for the red-spotted lady's slipper orchid so he could say he'd found one in Wyoming. We never found one. He accidentally jumped on a sleeping bull moose once, and his bucket of wildflowers went flying and the two big guys ran in opposite directions. No shit. He punched a mad mother moose in the jaw once, cracking his wrist, but he saved my sister and himself. And I felt fear ringing all over the canyon for years after that. Nothing ever scared my dad. I was 5. That's crazy, because cow moose are one of the most dangerous things in the woods. They will kill you dead for their calf, to protect their cows. I'm not sure if my dad saw Sabe or not. He had bedtime stories we weren't sure were true, but my grandfather saw one up at the Canadian border in Montana. I was very concerned with bears and rattlesnakes and even wolverine, as my dad had stood 10 feet from one once. He was quite fearless, like you, Steve, and was famous for chasing bears out of people's campgrounds with only a broom handle. So as a child, I just didn't want Sabe to scare me and be real with all the bears and mountain lions already to fear. I spent years thinking about them and sending messages to them to please not scare me if they were real. I already had a very scary 6'6" abusive uncle. Oh, that's not good. So I was very, very clear for years that I did not want to ever be shocked or tortured by seeing a huge hairy guy up in the Wind Rivers. I needed this from them, because my dad would not ever stop going out and hunting elk while I carry the longbow, then crossbow, then the rifle. I could drive at 11 in case he shot himself or had a heart attack. He was very reverent and obsessed about not injuring without killing the elk. He would only kill one with no calves. Like you, Steve, he revered the bulls and said he saw a great white elk living up there. Maybe a tall tale. But my dad empowered me to survive crazy California wildfires and floods and bad guys and no homes, and though he left when I was only 19, he has saved my life many times since. And he knew that TV was fake programming, and so I went outside to play rather than be programmed. He knew from his Marine training that we had enemies here trying to steal our show by pretending to be environmentalists. He was really one. He wouldn't hunt a herd that had natural or man as predator. He wouldn't hunt a herd that had natural or man as predators already. So as my life progressed, I wanted to get a part-time job after a year being a first-time mother and get a little break. I answered an ad for office manager and got it. It was in Broomfield, Colorado. I was instantly blown away because I was asked to transcribe dolphins being channeled through Barbara Rawlinson. She was a trance channel known by the First Nation people as Dolphin Woman. What? Animals can talk to us? I was absolutely ecstatic by this revelation, and my first son is today an animal husbander and beekeeper. He told me in his 2-year-old way that all animals care about their details and relationships as much as we do. Whoa. Kids are amazing these days. So much to learn from our incredible youth, but I digress. So as I got more trained as an assistant to Barbara, we went to Blue Mountain above Colorado Springs to do an interspecies communication workshop there. This area is known for having a lot of sightings of spacecraft and having a very thin veil. There were personal tents and an open kitchen and the group tent. Summertime was perfect weather. The week was spent in bonding exercises to unify the workshop attendees, so Barbara would be physically sore from channeling the dolphins, which is a very different process of linking, and she would have to lay down and her body would undulate clumsily. Oh yeah, the dolphins have a message to the parents mostly to learn to raise kids without using fear and threats. Parents have progressed and try really hard not to overuse the word no to little ones. We have much to learn still, as parenting is not easy, and we have baddies trying to get to our kids and program them to be sheep. I know this audience understands completely. As a nanny for the last 30 years, I needed the guidance and gave more love than I would have without meeting the dolphins and whales, and yes, the Yeti, as we called Sabe. The whales or Yeti would have to be channeled just a few minutes after the dolphins to balance everything, which I didn't understand but did witness a few times. Whales are my absolute favorite, so I was enraptured to hear a whale coming through Barbara. I hope to meet orcas and trust them entirely. I have swam with dolphins and they know exactly who we are and what we need from them to progress spiritually and use more of our brains as they do. So the day came to channel a dolphin with either a whale or a Yeti to balance. I walked to the big tent, and as the channeling got underway, we heard that the dolphin was named Mocha, and they had met in person out on the sea on a boat from Hawaii a few months back. Barbara's personal assistant had heard the name Mocha in her head when they spotted a pod of dolphins, and she felt pulling at her throat. So she was blown away as the channel progressed. Someone asked what Earth changes would look like, and the dolphin said it would be nothing more than a gentle raising of the waters to clean the shorelines, and that was in '87. Another guy asked if he could call the dolphins while surfing, and he was interrupted by Mocha making a huge dolphin cry, and I can actually imitate as I heard it over and over as a transcriber later. The sound, which blew us all backwards a bit, is a phone number to call any big game animal, as Mocha went on to say, "Be careful what you call to you." We all thought shark, of course, but we're in Colorado. As the dolphin left, a Yeti came in. It snapped Barbara's jaw shut, and I jumped a game. It had a feminine-sounding voice or childlike. It kept clamping her jaw shut, as it was part of how it spoke, evidently. It sounded nothing at all like we would imagine. Not much testosterone, I thought. It sure took any fears away I was definitely harboring. Then it said that they can disappear, their bodies, and some of you might have seen us as they walked by them earlier. I instantly saw a whole family posing shyly for me as I walked to the big tent that morning. I had seen them. I think about them today as I hear all these stories, and I know that they want us to stop fearing them in general. Obviously, though, there are those that have not been good, and surely from listening here, these bad ones are outcasts from their own people. I think as our planet now is a very spiritual part of creation and raising frequency quickly, that all negative people of any kind and any sex, yes, women are sometimes very low vibe too, and the low vibe brings of all kinds won't make it. Sorry. Yes, women are sometimes very low vibe too, and the low vibe beings, I think, of all kinds won't make it. Do you know sending love and light surely dismantles dark beings? I know I personally am transforming my warrior response to this new way of fighting. We have subconscious knowledge about this, and we have habits that come from barbaric times we're moving out of now finally. I'm like Thomas Jefferson with my temper, who was so focused on creating a safe republic for the people to rule and prosper as God wants that he would call any man against this to a shooting match at each other. Quickest and best shot wins. He got bullets in him but always won. We can't do that anymore, and it's frustrating for me because I'm impatient about protecting our children now. So we have to develop spiritual warfare tactics, and I think the Sabe people have some things to teach us. The Sabe were struggling in '87 not to have to leave the planet due to human thought pollution. This brought them to discover their gift is actually handling that pollution. Sorry, I'm going to do that one more time. This brought them to discover their gift is actually handling that pollution. As I watch and listen here, I'm thinking sometimes they're first scaring to humble people, but then hoping to get to a point of removing the fear and being able to communicate. I think of the people who protect us from bad humans and think how they might get a certain wall around them the Sabe wants to dismantle so they can work together as protectors. Just my humble opinion. My dad was such a man who fought in Korea to protect us from communism, but also kept up the fight and taught ranchers why grazing their sheep on public land would hurt them eventually. Because we need grass sources protected. There's mutual respect and understanding, and not the great ineffectual gap between ranchers and hippies we've had since my dad died. My father didn't want all of Yellowstone to burn. He was enraged at the bleeding heart liberals. I believe Sabe can help us going forward with this vibration war, and we the people finally raising our vibes with the earth was definitely going to shake off any parasites very soon now. And it will be a gentle cleansing for the good people remaining and moving into a golden age where we develop our cool powers and get way more important here in creation. My vision from Mother Earth at age 9 when I asked her what she was going to do about the polluters, well, we've all polluted somewhat, but we who can think nicely and care for our whole Earth family like First Nation people have done will be safe because we will be very much needed to represent the mind of Earth, as that's what we do represent. So, stay safe and healthy as human beings out there, and be in peace because God needs you here. Thanks again, Steve, for your great diligence and spirit. This platform has saved me because I miss nature like crazy because of an injury I'll be better from soon. I just like to hang out with the best vibes, and your channel is the top for me. Sincerely, Ananda Seaborn. P.S. I will not fear when I do get back in the woods and see who I can see because of this channel, having people with great experience with Sabe, but never all alone. Too many people have disappeared. All right, that was a handful. And that covered some things that I've never heard in my life. I've never heard of anybody channeling out to a yeti and dolphins and whales from the mountains of Colorado. And your average person that's going to hear that is going to be probably going anywhere from laughter to just shaking their head thinking, what the hell am I doing on this channel? Right? But we're all students and we're all learning, and we have to hear from everyone. So you have to try. I'm not going to tell anybody what to do, but you got to try to listen to every voice. All right? Go with your gut instincts, go with your intuition, take from it what you will or leave it. That's the key. All right? Nobody is ramming anything down your throats. It's all up to you to take from it what you will or leave it. But at least you get the chance to hear from everybody no matter what. All right? It's well written, good chunk of information there, and you just cracked open a whole bunch of brand new doors for people to look into, right? All right, let's carry on up this valley. And I will be back. This will probably be the end of this one, and I will be back tomorrow with more from up there. I'm gonna give you guys a 360 right now, and then I'll get moving. Be safe out there.